All right, getting back on here once again. The ancestors are speaking heavy today. They're speaking very heavy today, and I think the reason why is because it's Thanksgiving. So you got to understand, on Thanksgiving Day, you have white supremacists all over the nation celebrating their holiday, which is basically them establishing their dominance of rule on this land. So if you take it back to when they celebrate their first Thanksgiving, that is the start, or it's towards the beginning of a lot of your oppression. Your oppression goes on for the next few hundred years after this first Thanksgiving they speak about. You understand what I'm saying? So right now, white supremacy is celebrating their holiday, and our ancestors are speaking, right? Remember, all of nature moves towards justice. I think it was MLK who said the arc of the moral universe is love, but it bends towards justice. All of nature moves towards justice. And black people, you are connected with all of nature. You have ancestors who are in the Atlantic Ocean. You have ancestors who were in Africa who died just when they were bringing them to the slave ships. You had people who were just dying fighting the slave traders. You had people who were thrown over the ocean, just in the Atlantic Ocean. There's thousands of your ancestors in the ocean, in the water, waiting for justice to be served to them. Then on this land, you get over on this land, countless of your ancestors were taken it. If you're one of the 1865 blacks, as I like to call you, 1865 means you got out of slavery around 1865, then you Native American as can be, which means that you have countless ancestors who lost their land on this land, right? Remember, the Native Americans, many of them just, the adults were captured and killed, and the children were just put into slavery, right? This is the 1865 blacks. Many of the Native Americans, they killed off the men. Once they killed the men, a lot of times they would ship off the women. They would ship off the children to a slave plantation and bring them up. They would have something called missions all over, where they would just raise them up, not tell them about their ancestry, not tell them about who they really were, and just say, you're Negro, you're a slave, right? You're black, but they wouldn't say who they really were. So all of nature, my family line in the last, it's 2021, since 1820, my family's been from Virginia, Southampton, Virginia, Arkansas, Mobile, Alabama, Louisiana, move over to Texas, Houston, Midway, Marshall, go up to Tulsa, Oklahoma, then they come out here to California, San Francisco, LA, Oakland. I'm born in Sacramento. Just in 200 years, my family's gone from that East Coast, touching the water in Virginia, all the way to the West Coast, touching that water in the Pacific Coast. We have ancestors everywhere in this land. You have ancestors everywhere in that Atlantic Ocean. You have ancestors everywhere in Africa. You're an ancient people all over the world. All right? So I think right now with this holiday, I think that's why my spirit's stirring up so much right now, because you have our enemies celebrating their dominance over us, and our ancestors are saying, no, nature is moving towards justice. All of their system is coming to an end at some point, because injustice cannot last long. Evil cannot stand forever. You cannot set up a system that's to dominate over people and it lasts forever. It's not constant. Okay? So on this holiday, we have to remember who we are. We have to remember what our history is and who we are. Just like July 4th, they celebrate July 4th. We really don't celebrate July 4th because we're like, that's not when we got independent. We have Juneteenth, right? My family's from Texas. My family's some of the last slaves to get word. We have it in my third great grandmother's writing. She speaks about how her slave owner at the time tells them, look, you all have been free for 4 years, but you didn't know it. You were free for 4 years. And the soldiers had to come and get my ancestors off the plantation and let them know they could go. And she said they didn't know where they were supposed to go. They were like, where are we supposed to go? Okay, so black people, you're ancient people. On this holiday, don't ever let people downplay your black experience, black people. As black people, we have a different experience than anybody else. This is why Key's ministry was started. because everyone was always, every time I saw someone speaking to blacks, it was like the low income, less privileged, minorities, all of these type of things that never spoke specifically to our situation. And if you want to heal a wound, if you want to heal a hurt, you have to deal specifically with what that hurt is, or what that specific issue is. And if you're going to help and speak and heal the black family, you have to deal specifically with them. You don't need to group them in with all minorities. You don't need to group them in with immigrants, which you're not an immigrant. You're not an immigrant. Tariq Nasheed talks about that a lot. He says, look, you, even if you were brought from Africa, you didn't get brought over to the USA. You got brought over to a land and then built the country called the USA. You didn't get brought over here. If you, 1865 black, you was Native American, you was already here. Your country got taken from you. Your land got taken from you. You got put into slavery. You got put into slavery as a prisoner of war. You didn't immigrate here. You and your family didn't decide to pack up and move to another country. You and your family got captured. Somewhere along the line, you got captured as a child and put into slavery, put into missions, taken from your identity. You know, another thing, I hear immigrants a lot of times talk about, different immigrant groups talk about certain things, and I personally, I don't argue with anybody outside of the black family. I don't argue with the black family either, but I'll have more patience with conversating with them. But I'm not gonna argue with somebody who just got here in the 70s. Do you understand what I'm saying? You talking about people about, well, why don't black people just, and then you're like, wait, hold on, when did your family get here? 1986. You be like, huh? Like, and you gonna come over here and try to, and then another thing, black family, when you got here, you weren't allowed to speak your African languages. When you go into a liquor store, when you go into a gas station, they all in there speaking their own language, right? Doing business, handling their own language. They didn't come here and get told they can't speak their own language. One immigrant said, he said, y'all don't understand what it's like to come somewhere and not know the language of the land. Yes, we do. We definitely do. We came here and we weren't even allowed to learn the language of the land. We weren't even allowed to learn English, and we weren't allowed to speak our African languages. Our African languages were outlawed. You get caught speaking your African languages, you were getting killed, or you were getting shipped out and beat. These immigrants don't come over here and get their language outlawed. And I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying you don't compete with other groups. Your specific situation is your specific situation. It has nothing to do with any other group. You have an enemy. That enemy has created a system known as white supremacy. It's a system. It's a political system. Which political means it goes all the way down to the courts and judges, their last arm or branch being the police and the common white citizen who supports that system, right? That's the system that you've been up under that's being celebrated right now on Thanksgiving. That's why I said that the ancestors are moving today. It's moving heavy today. So black family, you gotta know who you are. Ancient people. You all hear me talk a lot about Egypt and the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians, you know, a lot of us, we just think of it as a fairy tale or just sometime in history. The ancient Egyptians was the most dominant ruling nation, and they were all over the world. They weren't just in Egypt, North Africa. They were all over the world. They found that Egyptians were living here in the U.S. They found Egyptians went all the way to Australia. They found Egyptians were all the way in India. They found Egyptians all the way in the Middle East. They found Egyptians all the way in South America, Mexico. Egyptians went everywhere, right? They were in the Grand Canyon. They found, under the Grand Canyon, they found caves with a whole bunch of Egyptian artifacts showing that Egyptians were living all over there. The Egyptians were ancient people. There's a book by Princeton University professor Lynn, I want to say her name's Lynn Mescal, Private Life of New Kingdom Egypt. There were 3 kingdoms of Egypt. There's Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom. Old Kingdom goes back to like 3500 BC. That's when they start talking about the kingdoms of Egypt. A lot of people ask me about the kings of Egypt and queens of Egypt. We start going back to like 3500 BC. There was already African kingdoms established over there. There was already kingdoms established over here, right? This is just what is in history. It goes back farther than that, but a lot of stuff white people have to say called prehistory because they can't read the writings or they don't know exactly facts. But they know that there was kingdoms before that too. It's documented. It's on temple walls. We'll get into that in another video, but You have ancient Egyptians who 3,500 BC on dominate. Remember, Abraham doesn't even go into Egypt till 1800 BC. We're talking like a 1700 years before Abraham even goes into Egypt. Egypt's already been running things and ruling things worldwide. When you read that book, Private Life of New Kingdom Egypt, Lynn Meskell, Meskell, she goes in and talks a lot about how these Egyptians lived and what their personal lives were, and she talks about how their politics were. Very unique people, very powerful people. And she talks about how they had dreadlocks. She talks about how these people, the children, would have side locks. She shows pictures on the walls of these people with locks. When you look at these pictures on the wall, you realize they look like your brothers and sisters. You realize you are those people. You dead on these people. And that's why as we come back into our knowledge, you start seeing us as a people. We start growing the locks again. We start bringing out our Egyptian features again. You understand what I'm saying? She has temple walls full of black women with locks on their hair, full of black men with locks. These are the ancient Egyptians, and they always talk about, oh, we don't know what happened to them. Oh, we don't know. Everything in the Bible, black family, is speaking about a people known as the Israelite people who are going through a process of oppression and slavery. God is refining this people to make them a great people, but those are always his people. God's people were always the people who were going to go through the oppression. You are the people who have been going through the oppression, have gone through the oppression, and now we are on a way of coming out of oppression. We're coming out of oppression in many different ways. It takes a lot longer than certain black leaders and black politicians and black people want it to. You know, a lot of people who have certain levels of knowledge, they want this thing to speed up, but you can't speed up what God has been doing for centuries, right? We're going through a process. But black family, you are ancient people. You've already been here all over the earth for plenty of years before white people came. Remember, white people, they talk about this being the new world, and they just got here in the 1400s. They just got here in the 1400s and talk about they discovered a place that we already know. There was kingdoms established here 2000 BC. They got here 2000 BC to 1492. They got here 3,400 years later than kingdoms were established over here. So if there was kingdoms established, we don't even know when they started. We just know what they're telling us. So just what from their history and what they tell us about history, we already know. They didn't discover anything. They're so new to the world. They just got to this part of the world. A whole half of the world they just got to, y'all. Stop honoring white people as your saviors. Stop honoring white people. I know when I was a child, I got taught that the good thing about slavery was that we at least learned Christianity out of it. We already had Christianity. Christianity goes back ancient. Christianity goes back way, way more ancient. Some of y'all are already into that history. Some of y'all already understand that history. But we got to stop honoring white people as some gods to us. Stop letting white people call you minorities. You're not minorities. White people are less than 10% of this earth's population. They call you people of color. People have color. There's nothing, you're not people of color. You're not minorities anywhere. They say that to belittle you. They say that to keep you down. White people are just concentrated in the U.S., in North America really, and concentrated in Europe. And Europe is the smallest continent. So of the 7 continents, it's the smallest one. And I believe it's one of the smallest, it's either the smallest or second smallest continent. And they're concentrated there, and that's not even all white. Europe isn't even all white, right? So white people are the minority all over the world, and their numbers are going down all the time. There was an article in the Sacramento Bee out here maybe a couple months ago, and it was the front page of the paper. It talks about the numbers for whites have fallen for the 10th year in a row or so. Numbers for white people. White people are fighting nature. They have set up a system to be against 90% of the world's population, which was people of color, to maintain their whiteness. That is an evil. There's nothing to feel bad to stand up against that type of evil. Are all white people bad? We're not here to sit here and vouch for white people. We're not here to sit here and make white people feel comfortable. This is Keys Ministry. We are specifically speaking to the black experience and the black pain and the black oppression we've gone through. Okay? We've had white allies before, I can tell you that. There are plenty examples throughout our oppression, throughout our slavery, where we've had white people really go hard with us. A lot of them gave up their lives. A lot of them got put in jail for doing so. I told you all about Richard Allen, his slave owner freedom. Richard Allen ended up starting really African Christianity, black Christianity, in a way, the African Methodist Church. When he protested, he led a protest out there in the 1790s where he said, oh, y'all keep telling the black people to read Brothers and Sisters, but y'all having us worship on that side of the church and then the whites worship over here. This ain't real. This ain't real Christianity. We don't accept this form of Christianity. We walking out and starting our own form of Christianity, and they did it, right? Now we're in a mindset where we don't really own Christianity. Black Christians, we just do what we're stuck in these rituals where we keep doing the same thing, but we don't let Christianity lead us nowhere. We don't let the Spirit lead us nowhere. That's why I realized I had to step away from Christianity for a while, not from my spirituality, not from my connection with God, but step away from the rituals that were taking place because they weren't leading the people anywhere. It's almost like the 40 years in the wilderness of just doing the same thing. God's like, look, y'all, we can go get Canaan's land. We can go get this land of milk and honey. Remember, Moses sent the 12 spies in there, and all 10 of the spies were like, you know, these people are too big for us to go up against. You know, the Amalekites are there, the so-and-sos are there, all of them are there. And by the way, they're like giants. Like, Joshua and Caleb looked and said, is not God with us? Is not all of nature with us? Is not the Creator on our side? Should we not go up in there and just take the land, right? 2 of them had faith, and then they went with the 2 that had faith and took it. We dealing with black people who are so scared of standing up for themselves and so scared of going and letting the Spirit lead them where the Spirit's trying to take us as a people. The Spirit does not want us to be an oppressed people. The Spirit does not want us to be a people who live our lives in fear of our children going to the store, living our lives in fear of our children going to school and getting shot. We're not supposed to be living in fear of our women getting shot in their sleep. I've seen videos of high school girls getting hurt by police. I mean, we're dealing with some oppression that we're not supposed to be living like this. God's people do not live like this. Maybe for a time we had to go through it, but that time is up. That time is up. We're not supposed to be going through this no more. So we have to allow the Spirit to lead us where we are going and follow. If you don't want to follow, you can be the 40 years in the wilderness, just keep wandering around, wasting your time, or you can be like Joshua and Caleb and say, hey, is not God on the side of the oppressed? Is not God on the side of his people and of the righteous? And is not this system an unrighteous system? This system is based on oppression. It's something God has clearly been against. We do not have to accept that system, right? The ancestors are flowing right now. The ancestors are going right now. I didn't even know what I was going to speak about. I just knew that the ancestors were like, keep talking that talk, keep talking that talk, keep talking that talk. On another note, it's been 3 years. This week is actually 3 years that Keys Ministry has been on YouTube, which is really powerful. 3 years that we've been on YouTube. Started this out in Seattle. Started this with a sacrifice. My brother, both of them killed in his home. In his home. Was killed by a white woman, white police officer, right? People say justice was served. I don't believe justice is served when somebody goes to jail. When you look at ancient history, when somebody got killed, that's something that can be dealt with that day. That's something that should be dealt with that week. Figure out what happened. We live in an American system where white people take forever to bring justice. We just had the Ahmaud Arbery case. Ahmaud Arbery got murdered a couple years back. I think just this week his murderers got found guilty. A couple years later, black people, there's no need to celebrate. When justice happens, where someone is found guilty, that's not really something to celebrate. You know, that's a very sad thing, but you had to go through a year of hearing about the story, a year of the trial. I don't celebrate when people like Derek Chauvin get found guilty. I don't celebrate when people like Amber Geiger get found guilty. Right? That, in my mind, we have to take it to the next level. That should have been handled a long time ago so we can get back on with life. You let this thing go on for years. Since the time Ahmaud Arbery got murdered, there's been so many other murders. We just still going on the waiting list. There's another murder we got to deal with now. There's another murder we got to deal with now. Oh, the next trial starting now. This stuff should be handled, man. We come from African societies where you handle stuff that night. Right now in Africa, they still handle stuff that night, that week when something goes down. You get accused of something, you murder somebody, we're going to handle it that night. We don't need to go through a year process and get the evidence and wait on the judge and file the appeal and all this. This is white people's system of government. Another thing I want to say, a lot of black family, y'all is Democratic to the death. And I'm not Democrat or Republican. I'm not Democrat or Republican. A lot of black family, y'all talk to me and y'all is Democrat to the death. Y'all talk about how Democrats this and Democrats that, and we need, we're trying to do this, and we just need to keep the Republicans out and Trump and all that. Malcolm X told us, he said, really don't mess with this political government, but he said, definitely do not mess with the Democrats. That's what Malcolm X told us. Now, y'all don't have to listen to Malcolm, but Malcolm laid down his life with the people. He said, if you're going to pick one, don't pick the Democrats. That's what Malcolm X said. I'm not saying this, that's what Malcolm X said. The reason he said that, he said the Democrats, they'll act like they're on your side. They'll act like they're actually cool with you and friends with you. When in reality, they still uphold the same white supremacy system. Black people, this system of government started while you wasn't even reading or writing. You was just out in the fields from sun up to sundown. They was already establishing their system. You got out of slavery and just kind of joined their system and act like it's the only two options. I am not Democrat or Republican. I'm a black indigenous person of this earth. Why would I limit myself to be a Democrat, Republican? I'm a worldwide political party. We all are. We're a worldwide political nation. We limit ourselves to this thing called Democrat and Republicans. Ancestors are flowing right now, man. Ancestors are flowing. The Democrats will act like they're your friend. Joe Biden right now. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. I think every week I've seen millions, if not billions, being given to immigrants. Millions, if not billions, given to Asians. Millions, if not billions, given to Afghans. All these other groups who haven't done anything for the country, built any of the country. They don't even have a camaraderie mindset of the country. You know what I'm saying? When you go into these stores and you're dealing with these people, these Indian people, Middle Eastern people, they're not like, hey, you're my American brother and sister. We need to help each other out. They look at you as just, you come in here and buy, right? There's no camaraderie. There's no American spirit of camaraderie with these people. These people are getting cashed out money. Black family, you definitely don't mess with the Democrats. You definitely do not mess with the Democrats. Democrats do. Republicans actually is the one who actually really led the way of us getting up out of slavery too. But you don't have to mess with either one. What I'm saying is you don't limit yourself to any two options that white people have given you. The whole point of getting out of oppression is to take back your mind. White people come to you with an option. Bob Marley said, never let a politician do you a favor. Never let a politician offer you a favor. Ancient times, let's go back to ancient times. Ancient times, the spiritual people led the community. Now we've lowered ourselves to the politicians. Remember when the Israelites, they wanted to be led by a king. God said, I don't want you led by a king. I want you led by priest or prophet. Be led by spiritual people. Follow these spiritual people. But the Israelites wanted to have this nation. They wanted to have kings and queens. But God knew that was going to lower you. When I started, what was it? Theology 101, Introduction to Theology class. He started off that whole class talking about ancient times. The nations were led by the priest. Whoever was the spiritual leaders, that's who it was led by. Then it fell into the kings and queens. Then it fell into the politicians. We live under this politician-led society, which politics can never usurp spirituality. Spirituality is the highest form of science. It's the highest form of living is spiritual people. You cannot, as above, so below. Everything happens in the spiritual world before it happens in the physical world. I stand by this. Black family, we are going to get up out of our oppression spiritually. There's nothing on this physical world for us to do that's going to help us compete with white people or outdo white people. They make all the money. So it's not about us having more businesses. It's not about us they make all the money. They make the money. The money has their faces on it. It's not about you getting more judges in their court system. This is their court system. It's in their language. The English language is their language. They'll just change some of the language around. They know all the loopholes and everything. You cannot compete with them at their own game. As above, so below. Once you get there spiritually, then spiritually you'll know what you need to do physically. I'm not talking about people went up in your house and guns and you just sitting there fasting and praying and meditating and pray for the people who. I'm not talking about all that. Spiritually, man, we're gonna have to rise up spiritually as a people. Know who you are. Know who your story is. I'm seeing so many lies. It's Thanksgiving Day. I'm seeing so many lies on the TV. I see people honoring Christopher Columbus. I see people talking about the Native Americans and how they were actually blessed by the white settlers coming here. The black people here, where the Native Americans were actually going to destroy themselves through cannibalism. We was here for thousands of years on this land. And they talking about we was going to destroy ourselves by cannibalism, but we had already existed for thousands of years? Nah. Nope. We have a history that goes back farther than white people even. Like we were on this earth longer by ourselves than white people have been here. You understand what I'm saying? Like there were just centuries of just black people running kingdoms and queens and temples all over the world and education centers all over the world, books being traded and trade happening all over the place. That had nothing to do with white people. The whole histories. That has nothing to do with white people. White people come here and we just go along with how they say life is supposed to go. Remember, Satan deceives a lot of times with the truth. Okay? Satan deceives a lot of times with the truth. That's what he did with Eve. He said the truth, but he just deceived with the truth. Either leave a little bit out, add a little bit on there. But he tells the truth, but deceives with the truth. We get deceived with the truth, right? Christianity has truth all in it. The scriptures have truth all in it. We get deceived with the truth, right? The way we perceive Christianity, we get deceived by. You understand where I'm coming from? The way we perceive Christianity is how we get deceived. Turn the other cheek. You know, we're all equal in Christ. Love your enemies. We get deceived with the truth. The truth is in there. But remember, we get deceived with. I've talked about it before. There's 66 books in the English Bible. You go to that Ethiopian Bible, it's like 84 books. Some Bibles got, 100 plus books, okay? So we get deceived with the truth. We get taught that this Bible is the end all, be all. I'm like, wait, hold on. There's only 66 in there. You don't even have all the books. And they always find more and more scriptures, dude. I've seen the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've read the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's all types of literature and knowledge that just got left out of the 66 books that got given to the English people. And remember, the leaders of the English people didn't even want to give them the 66 books. You had people like John Wycliffe and Martin Luther who really they got killed for giving the people the Bible. They got killed for translating the Bible. These were people who used to work with the Catholic Church. And they're like, hey, the people need this knowledge. So they translated Bibles and put books, and they got killed, burned, hung. All these people who pushed Christianity further, black family, we got to push Christianity further. If you're going to still be on this religion, You're gonna have to push Christianity to its limits and see where that spirit's taking you, because it's moving, and it's moving with or without you. That's the beautiful thing. It's been 3 years since we've been on here with Keys Ministry, and so many questions have been brought up among my own family, among my own friends. So many topics have been brought up. People are asking questions. That's a beautiful thing. That's why Keys Ministry is on here, all right? So, happy 3-year anniversary to Keys Ministry. Y'all support this channel. Really support this channel. Like, subscribe, financially support. Hit the Cashapp. I want to be on here more often. I have so much knowledge and wisdom, not to brag, but to share, right? It's no point of having all this knowledge and wisdom and not being able to share it with the people. This is what it is. I'm trying to give this knowledge out. The more support I get, the more I can be on here more often. Hopefully to the point where this can be a daily conversation, a weekly conversation more so, all right? So go ahead and support if you are supporting these messages, you like these messages, share the messages with people who are asking these type of questions, this type of knowledge. I know sometimes it's sporadic and I'm going all over the place or whatnot. That's how spirit is. Spirit does not move 1, 2, 3, 4. Spirit, Christ says this, John 3. Spirit, no one chooses where the spirit goes, how the spirit moves. I'm on here talking to y'all. Spirit's coming to me. Talk about this, talk about that, talk about this, talk about that. I got so much stuff I want to share that I cannot share on here. I have so much stuff I want to talk about. But y'all go ahead and support. We're going to be right back on here. I think there is some changes happening all over the world with those who have the spirit. And y'all got to move with it. Don't be them 10 who is scared to go take the land. Be them 2 who is like, is not God on our side? See, I know God's on my side. I'm fully aware of that. So it doesn't matter. I'll go into the land of the giants, right? I always looked at Christianity. I always liked the people of Christianity who laid down their lives. Them Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who's going to do what they were going to do even if their life was on the line for. That's what I grew up in Christianity honoring. I didn't grow up in Christianity honoring the person who just prayed for their enemies. I grew up with the person who looked at their enemies and knew that they was their enemies and said, I'm still following God. I'm still doing what's right. Okay? So that's what we after. That's the spirit we after. All right? Peace to everybody. All love to the black family. Let's keep rolling with this. All right, y'all.